Good morning. Today is the time for two additional feuilletons that I'm going to read you. Both ain't be published and are going to be published next Monday in the Zimbabwe Sport magazine. I need to say the same disclaimer that I do pronounce every time, that all the materials has been written by me, Andrei Hamster Shatalov, and is going to be narrated too. Those materials are completely fictional stories and satire, completely fictional satire that is not intended to harm or hurt anyone. And if you find any resemblance or match with the practical reality or events or persons, that you should treat that as purely coincidental and random. Feuilleton number one for today as a number 340, as counted since July 2017, and that's called Awesome Granny Cat. That's scheduled as a fictional interview of Russia's military intelligencer to a magazine. Magazine. Good afternoon. We watched an incredible show on TV that was well heard from windows of our Moscow embassy. It sounded like Russia's police went on a terrible rampage, drinking spree and frantic dances about after they confidentially announced an arrest of mysterious female called Super Granny, Awesome Betty. Also, we noticed an unprecedented embarrassment on many faces of our colleagues, Russia's diplomats in the foreign countries. It looked incredibly sad and frustrated. We of course got that Russia's cops defeated Russia's military intelligence by nil score. However, we failed to make this sin what in fact happened. I'm melting to find out truth. Will you please spill it to me? Question mark. Russia's military intelligence. Of course that is for me, I came in. They caught our best crack thief in act. He was the most genius hoist-up acrobat in the entire history of Russia's intelligence. She was arrested just after she played piano, sipping sparkling and champagne with 5,000 guests who came to celebrate her 100 years jubilee since she was born. Magazine. Wait a minute. Didn't you say that she cut 100 years neck? Question mark. Officer. Yes, I do. Her career was something unique among all agents of Soviet military intelligence since it was founded. Magazine. But how this century-old bag could rob owners of sleek mansions and apartments? Question mark. Ain't she a bit old for such acrobatic tricks like cats climbs and attic flights? Question mark. Officer. She just pretended that she was 100 years old. That was her undercover agent story that was used to secure her immunity against criminal investigation and arraignment. In fact, she was a bit older than 50. Magazine. Yet, I can't get how she could substitute. You could substitute the real one for the imposter. Question mark. Officer. The real one, a professional composer, author of dozens of national musical hits, suddenly deceased during her vacation in a very remote and quiet place on the coast of the Black Sea 30 years ago. Her instant death went silently and stealthily, so there wasn't a single witness. Our agency section learned about the demise from its service sources, as we had a military base nearby. It was a surprise decision of our chief of staff to immediately substitute her for her biological daughter, looking very much like her, but 50 years younger. This was done as an improvised trick, but later proved to be a true ace. Magazine. Well, I understand that you disguised 20 years old girl for a 70 years old granny. How did you persuade the teen to so act? Question mark. Magazine. Officer. Because the substitute was our career officer since she was born in GRU, that is another title for Russia's military intelligence. Incubator, otherwise called the zoo, where we instead raise our agents made in test tube for biological material stolen by our intelligence. Our intelligence pilfered a composer's tampon that she had dumped in the levee, which carried the remains of her vaginal discharge during her menstruation, where our lab assistant found her eggs fit for reproduction. We made several offsprings who were educated in a class administrative camp called Zoo. Later, the future substitute was admitted to Moscow Circus Academy, where studied and trained as an acrobat and air gymnast. Magazine. But how did you change a young face for old bags? Kashmar. Officer, we made a super synthetic face mask for her. This happened at the end of ages when we had already obtained such technologies. Magazine. So you received the 20 years old super acrobat who was hidden on the documents and biography of the celebrity composer. Did your establishment have a clear idea how to use such opportunity? Kashmar. Officer, no. We didn't have any clear plan at the beginning. However, as her personality was perfectly advertised and made known to public in many countries, we started to use her for various intelligence purposes till we figure out that she has a perfect double-proof alibi as an old lady and famous musician should her theft be investigated in a party penthouse or in a luxurious yacht. Magazine. What did she steal? Kashmar. Officer. Stones, yellow jewels, rubies, diamonds, discs, and a billion worth promissory notes from well-secured compartment and safes. Magazine. How did she obtain keys? Kashmar. Officer. We trained her to snitch it from owners' pockets while they fainted for a few seconds after got shot by a microneedle or micro prick bearing sleeping agents or surprise ultrasound impact that caused short owners vertigo and unconsciousness. Magazine. Why did you need a gymnast for such missions? Officer. Jews are always kept away from guests. We need to somehow penetrate being unseen. She was a perfect window and ventilation climber, real cat, who approached safes and desk boxes through a gate that seemed impossible to crawl through. Magazine. Who did operate the cat? Officer. Our central headquarters said she was able to quietly steal in any article that we could only dream about. Magazine. How did you make her way out such parties bearing plunders? Magazine. She never brought it out. Usually she was to throw the swag out the windows to her escort accomplice who waited outside a building on a surface of water. Of course, in the latter case, she was to insert the stolen article in a floating case. When the owner gave alarm, she was always free of any hot objects that could be regarded as her criminal instruments or score. Magazine. How did she stumble? Magazine. She recklessly stole a watch from her while he invited her to have a lunch in celebration of her 100 years birthday anniversary. She had no idea that all first microelectronic personal appliances soaked through with tape, video, and radio beacon box. An escort officer who received the watch accidentally turned on a secret alarm that was to be activated by her in the event of danger or emergency. Of course, police got him grilled right away. He was shot in his ass by a liquor truth. And 5 minutes later she received a second order to repeat the cat climb to snitch a second article during same evening. When she sneaked into the same window, they pinched her and put handcuffs on her brilliant jukes. Magazine. Why did you main headquarters decide to rob her? Didn't you think that it was too risky to play cats and mice with such extra danger? Officer. We thought that we could persuade some buyers of confidential information that we have unlimited powers in Russia. Our representative said that we can do anything they could dream about. A buyer showed them a cover page of a celebrity magazine where Führer was depicted having a super wrist watch on his right hand. Then the buyer asked whether we could steal this watch for him to check out whether he could trust us in our powers. Magazine. Why didn't you fear that you could simply ask Führer to voluntarily give out such present as a confirmation of your ideal profile? Officer, the information the client wished to buy was about Führer's assets overseas in Russia that he had misappropriated while served as a country's leader. The buyer understood that we would not disclose the transaction to Führer whatever happens. That is why he thought that we would need to really snitch the watch and bring them to him as evidence of our skills. Magazine. How did Führer react when learned that you conspired to expose his guts to foreign dealers? Magazine. He yelled as loudly as that was heard from New York. All the conspirators were immediately fired from any state service. Magazine. What about Super Granny? Did Führer show any reverence to her serious age? Magazine. No, federal guards took her synthetic cover off and found a 50-year-old bitch who innocently smiled and said something like, "Surprise, boys." Magazine. Did Führer watch the exhibitionism? Officer, he just said that her tits were perfect for her job and commanded to lock her up as she abused his consent to an unbelievable extent. Magazine. Where she is? Officer, in the jail, waiting for a trial that is scheduled for January 2020. Magazine. How are they going to try her? I mean, under what name? Her real or the deceased composer? Officer, they announced that the composer quit the scene 2 days ago. The cat will be tried under her real name in a closed process, as accusers successfully moved for such limitations to protect Führer's privacy. Magazine. How many death cases is she responsible for? Do you know? Magazine. She started before I was born. I guess no one knows how many exhibits she pawned until we get access to her agency file. What isn't going to happen while victims of her stunts are still alive. Magazine. Thank you for the thriller you told me. That's all. The second feuilleton for today is numbered 341. It has accounted since July 2017 and is called Nightmares in Oklahoma. And it is scheduled as a fictional interview, fictional satire of a Mexican analyst, like a Mexican analyst to Zimbabwe Sun Sport magazine. This article hasn't been published yet and is going to be put on the public domain next Monday. The full satire is full fictional, again, and I must repeat, and resembles a match with reality is pretty coincidental or random. Magazine. Hello. How powerful is Mexican strategic analysis? What is your self-estimate? A Mexican analyst. I hope that we are stronger than it is necessary to fight away our enemies. Magazine. Do you know anything that our magazine could have no idea about? A Mexican analyst. In what area of research? Magazine. United States. Analyst. We have amassed a great volume of information about multiple abuses of constitutional abidance and loyalty by U.S. federal agents, what is a still mystery in the United States. Magazine. If you're ready to disclose your allegations, we will definitely publish each word of this interview. Analyst. Do you remember that modern history of US terror done through explosions in public places began when a terrible explosion of a federal building in Oklahoma happened on April 19th, 1995? Magazine. Of course I do remember. 2 suspects were reported to be sentenced for the intentional wrongdoing. One was allegedly cracked. What new you have got to tell us about that? Analyst. I believe that the Alfred Murray Federal Building was blown by different suspects who materially abused their powers and duties owed to the United States Constitution. The officially accused suspects, namely Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols, didn't do what they were charged with. Oh well, mistakes are an indispensable part of our judicial system. That might be. Who then blew the building? What is your information? Mexican analyst. The FBI. Mexican. This is sensational, if you're right, but please try first to explain to me why they did that. Analyst. They lost $300 million in a commercial test that was illegally conducted in a special training center where 3 former US Delta Force operators successfully robbed a real bank guarded by some FBI instructors and trainees. They did it under a commercial bet. Magazine. When the FBI Academy muffed up at the game for such awful stake? Analyst. It happened a month before April 19th in 1995 in one of or 2 Florida special towns that were used to train FBI special weapons and tactics in the counter-terror drills. Magazine. Why did they blow the building? I don't see any reason for them to do so, even if they fluffed on such great stake. Mexican analyst. They were afraid that US President Bill Clinton could cleanse their stables under such essential reason as their utmost unprofessionalism and lack of necessary fitness. They needed any kind of ear-splitting event to divert public attention from their major exemplary blunder and corruption. Magazine. Don't you think that homicide of 168 victims was a bit too much for such distraction maneuver? I could imagine that the FBI practiced illegal gambling in a closed for public special training center, what is a very frequent case among our militants. Though, how could they decide to murder so many innocent citizens? Mexican analyst. They didn't kill anyone. Bill Clinton was the first US president whose administration began malicious practice of pseudo-terror acts copying Russia's criminal experience. Oklahoma building residents and guests were told that it was important to help the government to save national security that fell broke on a very serious episode. Of course, they objected to accept the witness protection program that meant they would be called all dead, blasted in the building and receive new identity until the FBI pension fund offered them each $2 million for the voluntary social death under their real names and successful move to Canada, Arizona, New Mexico, and some other places. Plus, of course, they were guaranteed to receive proceeds of fair sale of all the real estate, all personal articles, and bank accounts in the names they held. Magazine. Did you find alive anyone of those victims? It was reported to be killed by the explosion on April 1995. Mexican analyst. We found all of them. They are perfectly safe and sound. after 24 years in the underground. Magazine. Do you mean that all police, forensic, FBI, and other reports from the crime scene that consisted of tons of documentation, evidence, exhibits, and etc. were forged by a huge group of law enforcement officers? It is impossible that they could have done it unless each of them acted in concert, in collusion with an organizer. By the way, who was the particular top organizer of the fake terror act? Mexican analyst. I can't say for sure. Yet, this white great man was him. Magazine. White great man. Did he lose his cash in a dropped pad? Mexican analyst. I believe so. However, it was explained to performers as a new design of national security that could help to lessen negative consequences of heavy flops of key national security agencies. The failure that occurred during the bank tussle was considered as a very material threat to human resources of FBI forces. The FBI directorship foresaw pretty serious declines and falls in the future. Magazine. Why? Mexican analyst. All three Delta Force operators were retired a few years before and planted into Russia under new Russian names and documents. They didn't defect, rather became Pentagon spooks overseas. However, this category of US servicemen becomes often a victim of local hawks, what causes immediate transfer of all they scored to winning enemy. The bank robbery and subsequent skiboo flattened out all key and top FBI power operations instructors and trainees, thus passing the whole FBI muscles title into very endangered hands located overseas. It was considered prudent to agree that such tests, as a local administration was sure that they would win over the Pentagon's former operators, who also could lose $300 million. No one actually believed that the trio would rob the bank, FBI bank, in accordance with the game in frame. Next. Were any cases in history when anyone went a victor in test contest with the FBI bank? Mexican analyst. Neither prior nor after. This 1995 hit on the FBI bank wasn't only where robbers got the prize. Magazine. Why? Mexican analyst. They were first decided to storm the bank with heavy machinery, explosives, and calculated to merely cut down hit buggies who rushed to the alarming financial establishment. The trio swept away, broomed by intense automatic fire all emergency groups from its way while making its exit. Magazine. Wasn't the FBI ready for such somersault? Mexican analyst. They're not. Such kick-up attack had never happened before. All previous testmen were cons, payment, daubers, programmers, and electronic frauds who attempted to steal banks' money quietly through silent remittances, forged commercial papers, or data corruption. That is why banks' backup became lazy, inadvertent, negligent, blithely thinking that nothing sonorous may happen in especially bad town where each resident has a certain connection to the bureau. When the trio started by snuff up of a front door or put everyone flat in a bank, this was an utmost shock to the FBI commanders who administered the test site, who figuratively pooped in their skivers. The common moon buggies were accurately sniped away by rocket launchers and rapid-fire submachines, what wasn't expected by the FBI instructors as a possibility. Thus, the robbers easily went out a control perimeter, what meant their victory in the test. They fetched home 300 million in a small envelope, being a secured promissory note of a third notable financial corporation. The story was filmed by Pentagon's films operator and shown to Bill Clinton to boast how good US military are against background of other national law enforcement. However, it took a right opposite effect on Clinton. He was stunned by the documentary not less than bank's visitors, who were abruptly grounded by the surprise explosion which almost ripped off their ears, and further frantic gunfire. Later, in several days, the FBI started to prepare the subsequent Oklahoma razzle-dazzle. Finally, Michael Mann, a famous Hollywood director, made and released his excellent 1995 movie called Heat, starring Al Pacino and Robert De Niro. Its screenplay is something close to what happened in that spring magazine. How do you know all of that, question mark? In such terribly accurate detail, question mark. Mexican annals. There was a storyteller from top US law enforcement. He got enrolled by a foreign spy agency as a paid lolly. He served that year near the White House security section. He was arrested by us in Mexico 10 years ago after absconded from his colleagues who were going to roast him stiffened. This was his deposit into our compassion to his hard fate. In fact, my tip isn't guess at all. The information comes from a precise source, not from conjectures and inferences, as usual for my job. Magazine. I got no word at all. Please accept my complete confusion as something really you earned. Okay.